Hello, welcome back. I'm Jeniffer Thompson.
And I'm Chad Thompson.
And this is season 7
of The Premise.
Where we get to the story behind the storyteller. We've got some amazing authors lined up for you this season. And guess what? The San Diego Writers Festival is coming up in just a couple months, folks. It's March 28th at the Coronado Public Library. It's free to everyone. And this year's keynote is Jodi Picoult. So make sure and mark your calendars. We'll see you there. And for The Premise, we've just got an amazing lineup of people who are going to talk about storytelling and writing and publishing and just,
And cars.
And cars and pasta. So stay tuned. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Italian cars. Italian pasta.
New York Times bestselling author Caitlin Rother has written or co-authored 16 books, the latest of which is Hooked, which I have just read and we're going to talk about today. This is the first in Rother's new Katrina and Good thriller series. Her other recent titles are Down to the Bone, about the McStay family murders, the updated edition of Body Parts, about serial killer Wayne Adam Ford, and Death on Ocean Boulevard, about the mysterious death of Rebecca Zahau. Rother, who worked as an investigative newspaper reporter for 19 years, before quitting the news biz to write books full-time, has appeared more than 250 times on TV, radio shows, and podcasts. She also works as a book coach, enjoys ocean swimming, and plays keyboards and sings in a jazzy, bluesy trio. Caitlin, welcome to The Premise.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this book. Hooked. There are so many topics. I don't imagine we'll get to all of them, but let's start with this. Tell us about Hooked. What is this book about?
Well, I have so many different sub-themes that I can talk about. It's really difficult for me to boil it down, but I know you're supposed to have an elevator pitch, but basically it's the first book in the series. So it launches with Hooked on February 1st. And it's basically a book about ethics, corruption, suicide, murder, addiction, and the way that materialism is not everything it seems, wealthy people behaving badly. And one thing that I really think is important is I kind of wrote it to be historical fiction. And given what we're going through today with all of these accusations about fake news and reporters being attacked constantly, and also journalism really taking a dive in terms of quality, just a lot of it has to do with how the industry has shrunk so much. Layoffs, mergers, buyouts. So many people have left the business that it's just a tiny version of itself. So I wanted to pay an homage to the way it used to be. So the book is set in 2015 when reporters were trusted to tell the truth and you wanted them to tell the truth and people were actually able to accept the truth for truth. Yeah. And journalism was not about misinformation and disinformation and partisan ideology. And law enforcement, we expected them to protect us and we called them knowing they would come and, hopefully do the right thing and follow the law as opposed to some of what we're seeing on the streets today where people fear them. So I just felt like this was a good time to go back and celebrate. It wasn't that long ago. It was only 10 years ago, but so much has changed. And so these are good characters. Ken Good, the surfing homicide detective, and Katrina Chopin, who is the investigative reporter. Katrina lives her life by ethics and integrity. And so when she meets Ken Good at Piatti, which is my favorite Italian restaurant in La Jolla, at the bar, they immediately hit it off, but he gets called out, a couple dead bodies, he's got to go. And she goes, "Oh, you're a homicide detective?" And he says, "Yeah." And then he doesn't know she's a reporter until he sees her the next morning at the news conference. And he says, "You're a reporter?" Because, detectives and reporters can't date each other when they're, but working on the same case. Yeah. It's an ethical big line that you're not allowed to cross. Yeah. So that's a huge theme in the whole series about how they can't be together. But there's this sexual tension and professional competition. Mm-hmm. So it's you always say that you can't have a story without conflict. Well, this has conflict on so many levels that hopefully that keeps the suspense level high.
100%. Yeah, I loved the, as you say, the underlying sexual tension. So really we've got romance and we've got, the typical thriller. And I got to go back to your comment, though, because I went to journalism school myself. And I can just remember being 19 years old and seeing Diane Sawyer doing undercover reporting. And I was so moved and so inspired. That's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to do something good in the world. And to me, the only way to do that was really through journalism. And reading your book just brought me back to that feeling. It stirred within me that feeling of like, I want to do good in the world. And and it's scary. It's scary to see what's happening in journalism and that people don't believe what they see. Chad calls it a post-truth society, and that's scary stuff.
Well, I went into journalism, with these ideals about right and wrong. And, I've always had that. Apparently, my mom told me that I've always been like that since my personality was formed, I guess, when I was a child, and it just stayed that way. So I've always been a rule follower. And, so I just wanted to expose wrongdoing, and I wanted to expose negligence and incompetence. So I covered a lot of government, so people always think because I was a true crime author that I was a police reporter, and I really wasn't. I covered government, the city hall and politics, and I covered a lot of political races. So I was an investigative reporter, but my area generally was in politics. And then they also had me do high profile, quick front page profiles on newsmakers. And those were always like super complicated stories where I had to cram in all this research and then get it done in, 3 days time. And and make people upset. A lot of people would get upset and scared when I would call. So
I bet. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a fantastic book. And,
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I got to say, Katrina, she's so meticulous and the tension also of her, just this crazy day running around, making these phone calls, trying to find as much information and as many facts as she can so she can tell the story well. And then, oh, by the way, you've got 3 hours to write it. We have a deadline today, and that
always. That was my life.
Which is stressful, but I guess it's, in a form of, adrenaline that's pretty exciting too.
Well, and not all reporters are capable of that. And not all reporters are investigative reporters. So when you say investigative reporter, and I was interviewed by another podcaster who was mentioning an author who was a TV reporter and talking about being an investigative reporter, but the scene that he was relaying was basically on the spot breaking news at a crime scene. Yeah. Not the same thing. Yeah. So investigative reporter means you love paper, you love documents, you love going through the court files, you love when somebody hands you a stack of manila folders with a bunch of old dusty papers in it and you go, oh, that's exciting. And you find all kinds of great nuggets and you weave them all the way into your stories and it's exciting and you want to share it with people. And that's why I loved what I did. And that's why I loved being an author even more, because I had way more room and space to put all those little facts.
Right. Well, I was just going to ask you, when did you decide you were going to write like full length novels, true crime, not novels, true crime nonfiction?
Thank you for making that distinction, because a lot of people don't seem to understand that there's no such thing as a true crime novel. Yeah, people often say that. Makes me crazy. So when I was, I have been writing fiction for a lot of my life. When I was just starting out as a cub reporter, I was back in Massachusetts, and it's just like Katrina, she worked in Northampton, Massachusetts. Gee, guess what? So did I.
Right what you know.
Yeah. Well, I thought, what the heck, right? So I was hired as a part-time reporter at the Springfield Union News because they had this whole exploitative system, where you had full-time reporters and you had a whole bunch of part-timers who worked full-time gigs but didn't get health benefits. So that was, really a lot of fun. So I would work a full-time schedule and I would write these long investigative stories, and that's eventually how I got hired. But basically, I wouldn't start work. My shift didn't start till 3:00 because those were the days when we would cover a lot of meetings. Because in Massachusetts, we would cover towns or cities. And so they're like their own little government. They don't have really a county government there. They have state government and they have local government. And so I would cover, a city and cover everything in it. Right. And so it was just, I had all this time on my hands. So I would go get my coffee in the morning and I would start, I would write stories, short stories. And I was trying to get published short stories first. And then eventually, once I got hired full time, I still wanted to keep it up. So I started doing writing workshops, and I would produce these little germs. So they did a trigger exercise, and we'd all write for, 15, 20 minutes. And then if you wanted to, you would read it aloud. Well, I did that for a year, and I produced a bunch of these little germs that I then put into my first novel, which is actually the prequel to this series. It's called Naked Addiction. Mm-hmm. And it features the same detective, Ken Good, but not Katrina Chopin because she's part of the new series. So there's a lot of backstory stuff, but that's basically how I started, was writing this novel, and I just couldn't get it published. So 17 years, I was going to writing conferences, I was meeting editors, I was looking for agents. I just couldn't get published because your first book, and trying to get a novel published, it's pretty hard. So I thought, well, okay, I'm a newspaper reporter. I'm a professional writer. Why don't I try nonfiction? And so there was a court case, the Kristen Rossum case. I don't know if you remember that one here in San Diego. The beautiful toxicologist who worked at the medical examiner's office who stole fentanyl from the lab. And fentanyl was not available like it is now. It was basically very controlled. You'd get it at a hospital. You could get it at the ME's toxicology lab, but you couldn't get it on the street. So she basically poisoned her husband with these fentanyl patches, or a little vial of fentanyl citrate, which is like enough in a sweet and low packet would kill 10 people. That's how strong it is. Wow. So she somehow poisoned him. And then she told this whole story about how he had sedated himself because he was depressed she was leaving him. And then he sprinkled red rose petals over himself, in this dramatic gesture. So anyway, turns out she was convicted, and they found all this fentanyl in his system. And that was my first, court case that I covered from beginning to end. And then that was my first book, is called Poison Love, based on that. And it took off, and it was huge. And so it's my best-selling book to date, as a matter of fact, still. Wow. So that's how I got started, was in true crime, because I couldn't get my novel published. And once I did get it published, 17 years it took to get it published, I just didn't really know what I was doing. So it basically, I needed to do all the research that I did when I wrote 12 true crime books of interviewing detectives and reading investigative reports and following a case from the beginning to the end, and going to the trials and interviewing people and reading the detectives' witness interviews and listening to audio of them interviewing. And so I know how the detectives think. I know how they talk. I know about their interaction, with these witnesses, and what order they do these investigations, what the protocols are. And now I know all that stuff. And so now it comes naturally to my characters. It didn't before. So I feel like my dream was to write crime fiction, not to write true crime. It's just that the way it played out was just the realities of the business. And I just didn't know what I didn't know, and so now I know it.
I love that you share this story that you're telling us in your author's note and your acknowledgments of the book, because it's so interesting. You read a book and you think, wow, it's so perfect. It came together that way, right? Oh, hell no. Yeah. Oh, hell no. And you mentioned Michael Connelly had a tip for you when you first wrote this book and you were getting rejections.
Right. So people say, oh, Michael Connelly? Well, no, it's not like we're best friends or anything, but my boyfriend when I worked at the LA Times was his former editor.
Oh, nice.
So they were friends. And so, like, we all went to a U2 concert together. They stayed friends. And so years later, I'm trying to write this. I'm trying to get Naked Addiction published. I still can't get it published. So I'm getting Poison Love published. And I sent him an email and I said, hey, would you be willing to do a blurb for me on this book, Poison Love? And he goes, don't you have a novel you're working on? I go, yeah, but I don't have a contract or anything. He goes, well, why don't I read that? Maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll help you get published. And I was like, okay, I guess. He goes, I only do one blurb per author per lifetime. So it was a risk because if he didn't like it, then I would have wasted my one chance at a Michael Connelly blurb. So anyway, he read the manuscript. And as I said in the acknowledgments, I was perfectly honest. He said, look, the one thing you do really well is character. And that's not something you can learn. That's just natural to you, or you either know how to do that or you don't. But what you don't really know how to do as well is police procedure. And because that's what I'm known for, I can't really give you a blurb with the title of the book in it because people would expect you to meet a certain standard. And to be honest, your procedural stuff is kind of amateurish. And I was like, okay. And he goes, and by the way, I knew too early, it was too obvious who the killer was. So anyway, I basically revamped my story and layered in some stuff and made somebody else the killer based on his critique, which was so nice of him to do. And he said, oh, I'm so relieved that you're open to this. Like, he was worried that I was going to be upset. I'm like, oh my God, critique from Michael Connelly? God, please, bring it on.
Amazing.
So so then I was able to sell the book. But then I couldn't sell the sequel, which was Hooked, in its original form. And I went through 3 agents before I finally found one who was willing to even send it out again. I had to rewrite it multiple times. I started it over in a fresh file, in fact, because one of my agents was like, well, there's too much telling and not enough showing, and I know you have the chops to do this, so just open a new file and start over. I'm like, okay, great.
I can't imagine.
So anyway, 17 years later, here's Hooked. So,
worth the wait. I mean, well, and you say, like, learning how detectives think and talk was so integral. At what point did you know you needed to add in another protagonist, a female?
I always had another one. And I think the funny thing is that I don't think that the agents who read it early on, they were ready for that. Because detective novels were just one detective, period.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You didn't have to. But then I think on TV, they started having like that stupid show, Castle, which I just think is kind of lame because the reporter's lame and the detective seems kind of lame. But that's kind of one of those couples where you have a reporter and it's so unbelievable. It's just silly to me.
Well, I won't even start watching it then.
Yeah, we won't even go there, yeah.
I mean, I just happened to see it on TV, but I'm just using that as an example because it's a reporter and a police detective. So, but the idea of that I had from the very beginning. I thought to myself, well, okay, I think Patricia Cornwell had a problem early on as well, that she needed to do a female character. And I thought that's what I wanted to do too. But I really wanted to keep Ken Good. So I wanted to have them both be primary. I'm going to have the book really be based on the chemistry and the conflict between them. And that would be what the dynamic of the book. So it would be the premise and the dynamic. Mm-hmm. And then, weave the plot, make that about a whole bunch of other things. And that's what I did. And I honestly think that the agents that I had who passed on this were men. I really feel like the women seem much more excited about this book. I mean, men like it too, but I have found that the women seem to really like it and are more willing to take a chance. And then everybody seems to like it now. But I'm just saying, early on, they just didn't seem like, the 2 protagonists thing. Oh, no, I don't really know about that. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
So I think it was just, maybe it was before its time. And now it's, I don't know.
That's entirely possible. I mean,
right?
I love their dynamic, like the sexual tension and the chemistry is so alive. And that's another thing you mentioned in your author note, which I hate to give it away because the author's note and the acknowledgments is sort of like dessert to me. Like, that's the last thing.
And they're at the end of the book for a reason,
exactly.
too. So no spoilers,
no
please.
spoilers. But, there people gave you, critiques that you fixed. I mean, you absolutely nailed it. And this book is alive. I want to talk about the details in your writing, which I'm sure are directly related to you as an investigative reporter. Mm-hmm. You know, it's clear that you are a meticulous investigative reporter, which is why you've been so successful. And, you know, it's just it makes our female protagonist just come alive. Like she's almost solving the case for Ken.
Right.
But of course there's back and forth. They're helping each other through, you know, throughout the book. But she must have been so much fun to write. And so I just got to ask you, you know, did she come easy or did she evolve over time?
She evolved over time, and Ken Good has evolved over time too. So remember way back when I wrote Naked Addiction, honestly, it took 17 years to get that book published, and it's taken 17 years now to get this book published. So when I first started writing Ken Good, I was in my 30s. The characters are in their 30s. Now, I think I'm still the same person, but I don't approach sex in my mind the same way. I don't think about sex the same way. So that was a little bit of a challenge, to be honest, that I had to put myself back into the mindset of somebody who was 35 years old, right? And he's 37. But and then the other issue was when I first wrote her, my agent who originally told me to, you know, open a clean file, who didn't really get the premise, didn't appreciate the premise. I told him about this sex drug that I made up, which basically is supposed to make you feel that infatuation and that attraction that you feel really early on. And it's supposed to just perpetuate that for as long as you're taking the drug, so that if you're in a long-term relationship, it's supposed to reinvigorate that feeling, that sexual attraction and that infatuation. And it's all dopamine, right? So it's all about dopamine and that burst and that reward and all of that. He just was like, oh, that sounds exhausting. And I'm like, oh my God, he's totally missing the point.
Totally, yeah.
You know, I mean, I didn't have a cheerleader to start with. And he said, and by the way, this isn't you. Don't try to make her you. Make her somebody else. And so I actually originally had her be a lot more sexual, but I also figured that just the way society is and women are so judgmental of other women that I wanted readers to accept her. So I kind of played that down. So I want her to be sexual because this is a book about a, you know, sex drug. Honestly, that's one of the themes, right? And the corruption is, well, the company that is developing this sex drug, somebody involved in the company wants to get the FDA to expedite the approval, which they don't do unless it's an emergency COVID vaccine or something, right? Sure. This is a sex drug, is not an emergency. So anyway, I had to play.
The hell you say, yeah.
I had to play with her a little bit, and then Ken Good was much more, I think, kind of. He seemed like, to me, the way I remember, he was kind of more frustrated and distrusting and a little more angry in Naked Addiction. Because it's about, you know, it opens with him on the Coronado Bridge, remembering when his mother drove him there when he was 6 years old and got out of the car, put her high heels on the driver's seat, gave him a melancholy smile, went behind the car and climbed over the railing and jumped off. So suicide is one of the sub threads in this series. And it's not in every book, but that's a theme, and addiction is as well, and mental illness and all that sort of fun stuff, which are also themes that I'm drawn to in my nonfiction.
Yeah.
So anyway, I made her, I kind of shaped them both based on who I am now, but trying to remember who I used to be and trying to give her some of my stories and give them both parts of me. But that was a little bit of a challenge since so much time has passed to try to write younger characters. But I went through a lot of stuff when I was young, you know, with the dating world and all that nonsense. So that's still pretty burned into my brain. So,
I mean, you have experience with suicide in your personal life.
Yes, I do. My late husband killed himself. So, I know a lot about it. So.
And how
it
that
sort
feels.
of kind of sticks with me. And I wrote about it before he killed himself too. So, I mean, it's kind of always been there.
Interesting.
I don't know why, but it's just one of those things.
Well, you are a crime writer, and
but I think there's a reason why I became a crime writer, right? I mean, you know, so.
When you were a little girl, did you watch the news, or were you interested?
No, not at all.
Okay. Okay.
My parents had the LA Times in the house, and I read the comics, and that was pretty much, maybe the horoscope. I don't know.
Where did you grow up?
Well, I went to, we moved to San Diego when I was in the first grade. I went to three different elementary schools in San Diego, and then we moved to La Jolla when I was it's the summer before seventh grade. So I went to junior high and high school in La Jolla, went to UCSD for a couple quarters, transferred to Berkeley, and then I moved, did my master's at Medill outside of Chicago, and then I moved to the East Coast to work.
Yeah.
And then I made my way back to San Diego.
And here you are.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I came back to Ventura County and LA and then San Diego. So I've been all over. And so, you know, a lot of experience in the news business and a lot of living in different places. And
in a lot of ways, I think one of the things I enjoyed most about reading this book was just this beautiful romp through San Diego and La Jolla in particular.
Oh, good. Thanks.
And it was so much fun to know exactly where we are in town, you know, where the scene is, like right down to the street. But what really impressed me with how you did this really well. Anyone not familiar with San Diego, you gave them history and details that bring our city to life without it seeming odd. And you don't usually see that in fiction. You see it in reporting for sure. But you managed to marry those two in a really seamless way that I really enjoyed. And I'm sure anyone who doesn't live here would love as well. Did you realize you were doing that?
Oh, of course.
Yes, of course you did. Of course you did.
I mean, I really think it's important to ground the reader so you know what you're looking at, you know where you are, you know what you see, you know what you smell and hear and feel. And Wind and Sea, where Ken Good is kind of his second home. He's like a homing pigeon. He'll leave and he'll come back to Wind and Sea and just look at the water and connect with the water and go put his foot in the water. And he's a surfer, so he loves the ocean. And that's something that I've always had in me, so I gave it to my character. And Wind and Sea basically has served that same purpose for me. I'm just not a surfer, I'm a swimmer. So I don't swim down there because the waves are really rough and they're for surfing. So I swam a lot of years at La Jolla Cove until I got too smelly with the sea lions, and so now I swim at La Jolla Shores. So
yeah, boy, it is smelly down there too, which is such a shame.
Yes.
So one thing I'd like to point out that you don't actually use the word fuck in this novel. They don't really swear, and it was and you don't even really realize it's happening. So tell us about this decision to not use that word in the book.
So in my true crime books, most of my books are published by Kensington, which is now putting out books through their imprint Citadel. My editor basically said to me, if don't use that word because we're not going to be able to get your books into Walmart. They have some sort of, I don't know, some software or something maybe that searches your book, and they don't want that for their people. Like, okay, whatever. So I started using asterisks, even for shit, and the copy editor would put the word in, and I'd be like, well, my editor doesn't want that in there. And she's like, really? Why? And so, well, because this is how they talk. This is how reporters, and this is how detectives talk. They use that word a lot. They use the word fuck a lot. So, and honestly, I do too. I don't do it in front of people probably because I don't want to be seen as a foul-mouthed, sailor, but whatever. But I wanted it to be real. So I used the word effin'. So they're still cussing. It's just not going to offend anybody, because I've seen other authors posting their reviews, and there are people out there who get really, really offended and will refuse to buy the book. They'll give you a bad review. They'll give you like a 1 or 2 star review because you're using expletives. And I thought, why make an issue when there doesn't need to be? I mean, I'll just use effing or frickin'. So I'm still using the word, but it's in a way that won't offend people. And that was my thought on that.
And it works. It totally
I'm
works.
glad. I'm glad. Because I did make a decision on that. Every once in a while, I think I might use it. If it's really necessary, I'll use it, because it's a strong word and it does need to be used sometimes. And when you're exclaiming something and you're really mad or you're pissed off or you hurt yourself, I mean, I'm going to use that word. I'm not going to say effing. I don't say effing unless I'm trying not to offend somebody.
Sure.
Or I don't use it at all. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually take the word out of the sentence entirely and see how it reads. And if I don't need it, I'll take it out entirely. Yeah. And not even use effing, because the more you use expletives, even if you're not using the real word, I just think it's lazy.
Well, sure.
Like comedy can be lazy when people cuss too much, I think.
Totally. I totally agree with that. I remember one of the first times I swore in front of a really good friend of mine. We'd been hanging out for years, and one day we were sitting in a bar having a drink, and she said, "Oh my God, I've never heard you cuss." And I said, "Well, that's because Penelope's always with us." And, Penelope was a child. She was like, "Oh, there's a time and a place." But those words do, I'm fond of them. In the right moment, in the right moment, and with someone that you feel safe with. That's very true. That's very true. Caitlin, do you write every day?
I go through phases, and my main frustration is my body. My body does not want me to write every day, and it does not want me to write as much as I want to write. So I worked for 20 years as a reporter, and I typed a huge amount. So I put a lot of strain on my body with adrenaline and deadlines and typing. I used to type my interviews, which was extra typing on top of writing my story. I would type all my interviews, and I type very fast.
Wow.
So I would write as fast as people were talking, like I was a transcriber, which was dumb. So I basically overused my body over time, and I have very small bones, and I don't have a lot of muscle tissue, and so I end up using my tendons too much, and I have developed, problems in my neck, and over time I've had periods where I've had to write an entire book using voice activated software because I have just overtaxed my body too much. It just gives out. So I can't write every day. And I can't write as many hours a day as I have in me. So I have to pace myself. Nonetheless, I am like up to almost 60,000 words on a book that I started on December 13th. So I think that's kind of a lot.
That's impressive.
I have weird standards, of what is not enough.
What is a lot?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I've always been a workaholic. I just love to work. And you say, 16 books, when do you have the time? Well, because that's all I do is work. I don't have a big social life. I don't, have a giant friend crowd. I don't drink really much anymore because of various health issues. And so I don't go out that much. And anyway, I work because I enjoy working, and I enjoy putting out books, and I enjoy positive feedback from people who enjoy my books. And so that's pretty, and I play music when I can, and that's what I do.
Yeah. And
I enjoy working. It's fun. And it helps me escape all the nonsense out there. There's so much garbage happening right now that is so upsetting if you let it bother you. I just start writing the story and I forget about it.
Indeed.
That's the fun part.
Absolutely. And you're a writing coach as well.
Yeah, not as much anymore. I don't, people don't seem to really know that I'm a coach these days, so I don't do that as much. But when I was teaching, I used to teach at UCSD Extension and San Diego Writers Inc. And when, my students would work with me after the class was over, and I would, get a lot of coaching clients that way. But I still do it. If anybody wants to do a session, I'm happy to do that on the phone. So I don't do that much of it, but because I'm also writing all the time these days.
Sure. Well,
but yeah, if somebody wants a coaching session, I still do it.
Well, they can find you on your website, which is
That's right.
CaitlinRother.com. So if someone did hire you, is there a specific genre that you enjoy working on with clients?
Well, I really think I'm the best at doing front-end developmental editing. So I prefer to talk through ideas with people and research. Research has always been really big for me because research when you're doing nonfiction and true crime is just as important as the writing, honestly. It's a separate skill. And people don't know where to find information. And I've, been trained in that and trained myself to do that for so many years that, when I started out as a reporter, it just didn't occur to me that I could go to this place or that place to find this information or that information. I just didn't know. Well, you don't know until you learn where the things are, right? So I help people with how to research, where to research, what to research. I try to steer people towards, is this idea marketable or not? And if it isn't, what is it missing? That's what I like to do the most. There are people who say, oh, can I send you, I wrote a book and I put it online. And I'm like, well, why didn't you come to me before you put it online? Because then you read it and you're like, ay. And then I worked with one woman and she basically realized she had to take it down and rewrite the whole thing because she didn't really know what she was doing. Mm-hmm. So people who put up books and they don't, they're trying to do a true crime book, but they don't know how to write narrative. They don't know how to write a scene. They don't know what a scene is, and they don't know how to make research into a scene. They don't know any of that. It doesn't even occur to them because they've never learned a critical analysis of what makes a good book. Mm-hmm. So I have to. That's basically what I start with. I say, hey, do you know how to write a scene? Let me teach you how to write a scene. Here are the elements. And so that's basically what I do.
Nice.
It depends on what they want too. Sometimes people just want to talk through some ideas. I'm happy to do that too. And I'm happy to read and critique, a chapter or whatever. If then I can tell them what they're doing right and what they're not doing right and help them steer them on how to improve. Like this part here is what you want to do all the way through. You're just doing it in one paragraph. So do that all the time. Stuff
More
like
of
that.
More of that.
More of that. Yeah.
I know that you are already working on the next books in the series. Can you tell us where you're at and when we can expect to get the next book?
Yeah, the next book is called
17 years.
No, actually, I'm much faster now. Like I said, I just wrote like 60,000 words in a month and a half. So I'm doing much, much better. So Staged is the next book in the series, and it is coming out in June. So it is available for pre-order already.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I've already written books 3 and 4 as well. So
okay.
They are under submission with my editor.
Awesome.
And I hope to get some good news on at least book 3. And then we're not sure whether she says that debut authors often they like to end their series with 3 books, and no one told me that. And I wrote book 4. So whether or not she decides she wants to publish it, I'm going to publish it no matter what, because it's where I feel the story should go.
Got it. That's
with
great.
the story arc. And so the one I'm writing now was because until she decides whether she's going to buy 3 and 4, I needed something else to do. I already wrote those 2 books, and I'm not going to sit on my thumb. So I started a new character and a new plot. And I don't know if this is going to be a recurring character or if this is going to be a standalone, but it is going to be a female sheriff's detective this time, because we really don't have the way, if you look at the crime fiction world, there are authors who have kind of an area, just like in true crime. We're kind of geographically oriented. So there really aren't that many crime writers in San Diego. And so I said, hey, we don't have a sheriff's detective character, female character. Nobody's writing that in San Diego. So that seems like a good idea in terms of the market, and also to do something different from the existing series. So I want to do something different, start a different series, or just do a separate book. And so that's what I came up with. And I had an idea that came to me when I was sitting at dinner in Coronado. So I decided that it would be, my brand is kind of Coronado and La Jolla. So it takes place in those 2 cities. And so that's where the characters are from. And I don't want to say too much more, but
Awesome.
I'm really enjoying
Yay.
writing this one. And
Yay.
it's totally different. It's totally different.
I love it. Well, that's exciting. So we have a lot to look forward to from you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one more question before we close. A lot of our listeners are writers, and, we'd like to maybe end with some advice from you.
Well, I have a friend who just hit the USA best-selling author list with one of her recent books, and she goes, 32 years to be an overnight success. And so that's kind of how I feel. Here I am, book number 16. Took me 17 years to get it published. Like I said, it was supposed to be part of a series, and the first book took 17 years to get published too. You don't win if you give up. You have to just keep going. And I think people either don't have the talent and give up, or they don't stick with it long enough, because this is the exception are the people who do well right away. I was really lucky with my very first book that got published, Poison Love, that it sold so well. I mean, it's over 100,000 copies. So, I mean, for a first book, that was pretty amazing. And that was in the days when print runs the first print run was 40,000 books.
Sure.
I mean, today, I think it's like 3,000 books because it's just a different world. And so we have audiobooks now. We have Kindle, which we didn't really have, back then. And if we did, they would put the ebook out like 2 years later, So things have changed a lot. You have to really be able to reinvent yourself, and you've got to really keep up with everything, because the marketing and promotions are constantly changing. It takes so much of your time, and if you aren't willing to do that part of it, you aren't going to sell books. So that's one of the toughest things. I remember when I would teach writing workshops, I would get some of these students who refused. They didn't want to use their real name, and they didn't want to sell books in a bookstore or hold any kind of public event, because they just didn't want to do that. They just didn't think they needed to do that. And I'm like, well, you're not going to sell any books. You think the book is just going to sell itself?
Yeah,
you need to actually be out there and network and talk to people. And I'm not that great at that either, but I do get out there as much as I can. So,
well, according to your bio, you've been on more than 250 podcasts, TV shows, and radio. I mean, that's pretty damn
right.
good.
Oh, I know. I'm fine with doing that stuff, but I'm the networking stuff with real people outside of my house. I don't seem to have a lot of time for that, because I'm so busy working on something.
Yeah, well, you're a writer. I mean,
I'm a writer, and so I'm not as comfortable. And COVID really did a number on me in terms of my ability to deal with other people. It just took me a long time to kind of reintegrate into society, because all that time alone, it does a number on you, and then you're like, I don't remember how to talk to this person. Yeah. What do I say?
Indeed.
Anyway, I'm doing much better, and I've been on a never-ending book tour for the past year. This is my third book, and then I'm going to have Staged out in June. So I'm going to have 4 books out in 15 months.
Wow, that's
which
impressive.
Is just it's crazy though.
That's hard to keep track of.
I went for 4 years with no books, and then now I've got 4 books in 15 months. And the other thing is, how many times are people going to come out for you and buy your book, when you have them come out that close together? So it's been very exciting, but it's been tricky, So anyway, I'm not complaining. It's just, these are the things that you have to learn how to juggle. And so writing is not just sitting at your computer in your house by yourself. You got to do all this other stuff. And hopefully you get on TV, and hopefully you get on podcasts, and hopefully people think you're interesting enough that they have you back when you have another book come out, and you make contacts, and
don't give up.
And you make jokes, and you entertain, and you tell a good story, and that's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you sell books at your trio gigs?
No, I do not. I don't. We don't play that often. And I've thought about it, but I'm like, I don't know. It seems like they're interested in hearing about it, but they are not there for that.
Sure.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I had a friend who's like, oh, you and Geza, my partner I play with as well, you guys should sing at your book signing at Barnes & Noble. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. I think that'd be kind of cool. I saw you sing in Nashville.
Yeah. Well,
which was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That was fun. I mean, and I needed to do that, and it was good for me.
Yeah.
It was fun.
That was the killer Killer Nashville Writers Conference for our listeners. Well, Caitlin Rother, thank you so much for joining us here on The Premise today. We really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
Yeah. And I'm excited to read I guess it's really book 3, but we'll call it book 2 in the series. Staged.
Well, yeah, it's book 2.
Got it.
But yeah, I'm calling Naked Addiction the prequel.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you can learn more about Caitlin at CaitlinRother.com. Subscribe to her Substack at Caitlin Rother, and be sure to follow her on BookBub, where you can find ebook discounts and other goodies. Follow her on Facebook, Caitlin Rother, and Instagram at The Real Caitlin Rother, all separated by underscores. This has been another episode of The Premise. You can visit us online at thepremisepod.com and subscribe and rate or review The Premise wherever you get your podcasts. These reviews really help us get the word out about authors like Caitlin, and they help increase our subscriber base. Also, folks, be sure to mark your calendar. The 7th annual San Diego Writers Festival is happening on March 28th at the Coronado Public Library, and this year's keynote is Jodi Picoult. So that's going to be a fantastic day. Then again, that is on March 28th. You can follow me, your host, on Instagram at Jeniffer Grace, or follow me on Facebook at Jeniffer Thompson Consulting. Until next time, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.